Okay, we're here at Pointer. What did they bring us here for?
Yeah, it's such a nice place with so many people doing such great work.
It's wild that Pointer started in 1975.
I know, right? And that's only 3 years after Watergate.
I wonder what it was like in the 1970s. No Wi-Fi?
No Google Maps.
No DoorDash?
No Twitter? I can't even imagine.
If only there was a place we could go to meet with people who care about journalism and ask them what it was like back then.
Were you around in the 1970s?
I was alive, if that's what you mean. That was the era of Watergate. It was the end of the Vietnam War, which was a seminal period for people my age.
I was a Vietnam veteran on campus my first year back in college, and I was actually part of on the committee for the Vietnam Veterans Against the War, even though I served in the war. But May 4th, 1970, you asked the right year. It was a very significant time in our life.
I live in the life of a 6-year-old, I guess.
I was not. I was born in 2000, so.
They were ancient. We had no cars, no phones, no air, no shoes.
I don't know, the first thing that comes to me is Jaws.
I was born August 5th, which was the week that President Nixon resigned.
I was in school. I was growing up. And in that time, in the 70s, is when I wanted to be a journalist.
I look back at that time, if you look at the TV commercials, it was like pretty much all predominantly white people. And when I was growing up in that situation, I didn't realize it, but looking back on it, I realized how diverse things are now.
When I graduated from college, 1973, my dad wanted to stay. We went to Washington. He wanted to stay at the Watergate because he said, something is happening. Something is up, and I know it, and this is going to be a big deal.
The 70s were a great time. The 80s were okay, and today's today.
What was communicating with others like back then? What was the best thing about communication now compared to when you were growing up?
Picked up the telephone, or you wrote a letter.
Obviously, the speed, is very, very quick. Of course, there are some downsides. The amazing speed of communication means that the misinformation can travel a lot faster.
Obviously, with social media and the internet, communication has expanded, but I do feel like it's left us a little crippled in regard to really connecting and feeling one's intention.
It seemed like it was a much more simpler time, a much more connected time. It seemed, I don't want to romanticize the 70s. I'm sure it had all the problems, but as a child, I remember I was still living in an era where people kept their doors unlocked and you could kind of go. There was a custom to where if you didn't have milk or bread or whatever, you could literally go to your neighbor's house, knock on the door, it would be open, and just go right in and get some bread or milk and, leave $1 or not. And vice versa, people did the same thing.
Young people right now are so different than us and what we were willing to say on campus or on social media, online and stuff. So I think that's like the coolest thing.
I think I've witnessed this incredible change in demographics. Our communities have become a lot more diverse, and so part of our challenge is to make the media a lot more diverse.
The best change is I can pull out my phone and find out what's happening right now, real time. And that's great.
I feel there's been tremendous strides in equality, in that the LGBT group is now accepted. We have our first governor elected. There have been much more racial equality. And the good thing I think about the past week is people realize the importance of voting.
What's something about modern times that's better than when you were young?
More access to information, but that's also a double-edged sword.
I love this, even though it took me a while to have a smartphone. But I love the conveniences of that, which we did not have.
And since we're honoring Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein tonight, what do you think their impact has been on democracy and journalism?
Just a huge, profound impact. I mean, their journalism work in covering President Nixon certainly had an effect on me and really influenced my decision to become a journalist.
They found out everything about what Nixon was doing, the Watergate, and they got him to resign. These two gentlemen.
If he probably had the resources he had that we have now, it probably wouldn't have lasted as long as far as the depth in which Mr. Bernstein and Mr. Woodward have gone through. But no, I think he's done a tremendous job in setting the trend for other journalists to do what they do best, and that's to investigate and get the true story.
When we were in history class, when you got to the 60s to now, it was the civil rights movement and all the chaos in the 60s, and then Watergate.
I remember vividly reading their articles day by day as they would come out. I thought they were well written, and it showed the importance of the press in society. You have to have a free press.
They've been heroes. They inspired a great number of us to go into journalism. They inspired people to pay attention and question authority. My hat's off to them. They changed history.
Wow, that was fun. Time to see if the guests like our video. Are you all ready? Yes.